On my desk in the house where I grew up and where my parents still live is this little set of 3 plastic cubes. One of them has the months of the year and the other 2 have numbers on them, and you can rearrange them to form the date. I think that's the idea behind them anyway. And when I grew up, I would change it to whatever day it was that day, or I would forget. And they were really one of the least important things in my room. And then for 2 years in high school, the cubes said January 11th, 2 years straight. And then they said March 1st for the next 15 years. And here's why. I was not a popular kid growing up. I didn't really have friends. I didn't really have girls like me or anything like that. And I was in this place where it seemed like everybody had boyfriends and girlfriends by the time they were like 11. And so when I was 15 and a half and I never dated anybody, I thought that was it. I thought that was the end of my life. I was never going to date anybody in the future. No one's ever going to like me. And so I fell into the trap that everyone falls into when they get to this point, which is I jumped into the first relationship with the first girl who expressed any interest in me without stopping for 2 seconds to notice that she was a complete manipulative, raving psycho bitch. Now, I don't say that just to insult her. I say that as an objective observer. I think anybody who looked at her would have said the same thing. She wouldn't say, for example, you can't talk to other girls. But she would see me talking to another girl, just a friend, and then she'd say, oh, you want to talk to her. I see, that's why you're talking to her, because you want to talk to her, you don't want to talk to me. Why don't you want to talk to me? I know why you don't want to talk to me, because I'm the worst person in the world. And so you know what? You go talk to her. If that's who you prefer to talk to, you talk to her, and don't talk to me at all. And that makes sense, because I suck, and that's why I cut myself in the arm last night, and it felt good, and I'm going to go throw myself off a stairwell. And she would go. And if I were in this relationship now, at age 33, I would say, okay, clearly you have some stuff to work out on your own. Best of luck. But at 15 and a half, I had no tools to deal with this, so I did what I did my whole childhood as the victim of bullying. I would just go into this whole supplicating posture, and I'd run after her. I'd say, no, don't throw yourself off the stairs. I didn't mean it. I wasn't actually talking to her. I won't talk to her ever again. I won't talk to anyone. And that continued. And that's why my cube said January 11th for 2 years, because that was our anniversary. That was the day that we told everybody at the lunch table that we were going out. And so at first I was so happy, I'm like, I'm going to make the cube say January 11th. And then she came over to my house and I showed her, look, it says January 11th, our anniversary. And then as I got to know her a little better, I realized I could never change those cubes again, because if she saw it said something else. Oh, it doesn't say our anniversary anymore. What does it say? It must be some other anniversary with some other girl. Who's this other girl? So the cube said January 11th. And I learned why people stay in abusive relationships. You know, when you're outside, you hear about one and you want to say to somebody, if it's so bad, if it's so horrible, why don't you just get out? I'll tell you why. Because you can't get out of an abusive relationship halfway. It's not something that you can just try a little bit to get out of and see how it goes. You have to do it all or nothing. You have to be ready on that day to drop the nuclear bomb and get out of the relationship. And every day it seems like you really ought to do it tomorrow, right? And so if she's in some kind of a mood, you think, okay, either I can drop the nuclear bomb or I can get her through this tantrum over the next 3 hours, and then I will worry about it later. And that is how 2 years passed. And then one day, halfway through my senior year of high school, my French teacher called me into her room after school for an AP French review session. This is like the one time when I had a little free pass to be away from my girlfriend, because she had us sign up for all the same classes, all the same activities, but she took Spanish, I took French. So we couldn't do that. So AP French review session, I go in, and there's my French teacher sitting there. My French teacher is named Madame. All French teachers are named Madame, even the men. And she's sitting there with Brian, Mike, and Steve, who are 3 of my male friends who I hadn't talked to in months because I'd just been gradually shutting down every other relationship. And Madame says, "Close the door." And I closed it. She really talked like that. She was French. She was actually from Algeria, but she spoke French. She spoke like this, because that's how they speak in France. And I closed the door, and she said, "Sit down. This is not an AP French review session. This is an intervention." And she said, "You need to break up with that girl." And then I surprised her because I think she thought she'd have to convince me that I had to break up with a girl. But I told her, I know. I am well aware that I have to get out of this situation, but I don't know how. And a lot of people have been trying to help me break up with this girl. There was a school psychiatrist, my parents, lots of people. Why is that funny? Why are people laughing at that? The school psychiatrist actually gave up, which I found out later, that she tried one day, and she brought me in there, and I thought I was going to her to help my girlfriend with her own problems, but instead the psychiatrist was there to help me get away from her problems. And actually the psychiatrist told my French teacher later, he's never going to break up with that girl. And my French teacher apparently said to the psychiatrist, "Oh yes, he will." And so what the French teacher did that none of the other people had done was she said, "Take out your calendar. We are going to choose a date." And she made me choose a date that I was going to break up with her. And we picked this one day because it seemed to be perfect. It was after the SATs and after college applications were due. Because I had all these excuses. Oh, but she's going to be working on this. And we were in this science Olympiad competition together where we were building machines and things and going to the state science Olympiad competition. I'm not saying the state competition to impress anybody. The state was Delaware. So everybody went to the state competition. There were no county level competitions at Delaware because we have 3 counties, 2 at high tide. That's a quote from our governor, actually. So she said after the Science Olympiad is over, we would choose that particular day because that was a Saturday, and then on Sunday and Monday I was going to go visit a college, and so she would have time when she couldn't contact me to cool off. And I realized that was the perfect day. If we didn't do it that day, we'd never do it. And Madame said, "You're going to say to her, 'I am breaking up with you.'" And that is the nuclear bomb, right? And I told her, I can't say that. I'm not going to say those words. I'm going to have to think of some way that we can just reduce things gradually. And so Madame suggested we role play, that she be my girlfriend and I try to break up with her. And so I would play it the same way I always played it. I said, okay, well, I'm not going to say I'm breaking up with you, but I'll say this. So, a few months ago, we had a talk about maybe taking a little break to rediscover ourselves, and maybe if we try to do that, and Madame interrupted me, and she said, "No, you're not going to say that. You're going to say, 'I am breaking up with you.'" That's what I can't say that, but okay, I'll say, so in the fall, we might go to different colleges, and if we do, and you met somebody, you would be well. I mean, I wouldn't meet anybody, but if you did, then you were welcome to. And again, Madame, no, you must say, "I am breaking up with you." And I broke up with Madame successfully. As the evening wore on, by the end of that night, Madame and I no longer an item. But I knew I couldn't do it really with my girlfriend, and I started thinking about what I would actually say. And when the bus got back from that Science Olympiad competition, and I knew the moment had come, I walked over to her. She was about to get a ride home with someone, and I said, "Oh, hold on, I need to talk to you for just a second." And I stammered at first. I said, I learned some things that I didn't know before, and I'm breaking up with you. And she got quiet. She didn't say anything. She just kind of walked away. And over the next few weeks, she tried all kinds of things to get back together. She would cry a lot, but she always cried a lot beforehand anyway, so what's the difference? She made up all kinds of ridiculous stories about things that had happened to her that I wasn't there to prevent. But she didn't kill herself, and if she did, it wouldn't really have been my fault. And so that day, when I got home from the parking lot, I changed the cubes on my calendar to the new date, which it has now said for the last 15 years, and still says in Delaware right now, March 1st, the day that I have celebrated every year and that I call Independence Day. Thank you.